BangTheBook.com.
Hello, so everybody, welcome into this Friday, March 25th edition of Bang the Book Radio. My name is Adam Burke. I'll be your host for the next couple of hours here as we go over a lot of stuff on the hardwood, NBA, college basketball, March Madness, Friday of the Sweet 16 here. Not a very exciting Thursday night, but still plenty to discuss with that. We'll have a couple of college basketball guests coming up. We'll open things up today with Matt Cianfrone of Friendly Bounce, talk some NBA with him. Then we'll bring in Thomas Beindit from BTPowerhouse. We'll talk about what we saw yesterday, what we could see the rest of the weekend. And of course, he's got a Big Ten focus, so we'll see if any of those Big Ten teams, are going to be able to make that move into the Elite Eight. And we'll hear from Cole Ryan with the final of 3 installments of Betting the Buckets for this week. I'll have some NHL thoughts along the way as well. Then finally, we'll hear from Kyle Hunter, HunterSportsPicks.com. We'll talk about tonight's action over the weekend, and then also the Vegas 16, which tips off on Monday, which is actually the Vegas 8 this year. So we'll get some more insight into that. We'll go ahead and bring in today's first guest. That is Matt Cianfrone of Friendly Bounce. Matt, how's it going today, sir?
Going well, yourself?
Doing very well. Can't complain. Happy that the weekend's here and should have some good Elite 8 action to watch. But in terms of the NBA here, late March is kind of a difficult time for fans and for handicappers because, we get so late in the regular season. We have some teams that just don't give a full effort. We have some teams that, wind up resting guys. I know San Antonio is going to rest quite a few guys here tonight for their game. It's not a great time to be an NBA fan. However, there are a lot of playoff races to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's a really weird time for sure. I mean, the other night I sat here rooting for Luke Babbitt to get to, I think it was 30 or 40, just because he had, the Pelicans are basically not an NBA team at this point with all the injuries, and so they're running out Luke Babbitt as their leading scorer. And this kind of is that time of the year where it feels like we get that completely random 50-point game from somebody you'd never imagine in your life scoring 50. We had Corey Brewer a couple years ago did it. Mo Williams did it. So it feels like if we're going to get one this year, that just completely bizarre 50, it's going to come in the next week or so. Because like you said, eventually you're going to have teams seeing that seeding possibilities that they've got to actually play for. They can't rest guys as much, or things are done and you just kind of rest guys all over the place. So it's strange. I typically at this point of the year try to find a game or two that I will be real competitive each night and kind of focus on that one. Or in my case, I'm a Bucks fan, so with the way they're playing lately, at least it's entertaining. So I typically find myself locked onto their game, and then I'll bounce around and find whatever's close after that. But if you're just a casual fan of the league and not someone who's focused on a team or a player or something, it could be a really strange time for sure.
Well, before we talk about tonight's action, I want to go back to last night a little bit. I talked with a couple different guests yesterday on the show about LeBron James and the issues going on with the Cleveland Cavs. And, they came to the forefront again last night, losing on the road at Brooklyn, scored 12 points in the fourth quarter. Just a pathetic showing from an effort standpoint for the most part for the Cavs. LeBron with 36 and 5, but all the talk about him today and the Twitter sphere and everywhere else, some of the defensive efforts that he showed last night.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't watch that game. I live in that random part of New Jersey where the Yes Network is off the only cable place I can have, and so I can't watch any Nets games because I'm blacked out on League Pass and I don't have the channel, and it's going to actually bother me with the Yankees coming soon. So I didn't see anything, but it sure sounds like it was a strange game. I mean, like you said, 12 points in a quarter. You lose to a really bad Brooklyn team. And really, Cleveland has everything to play for. As much as they don't want to admit the one seed matters, and it may not for them, but I think it matters in the sense of they're going to let Toronto, if Toronto does come up and get this one seed, they're going to let Toronto have some more confidence and kind of a swagger about them that it's just going to make it tougher to play against. So I think as much as Cleveland's going to tell us the one seed doesn't matter, I think in a way it does. And doing stuff like losing to Brooklyn in this late in the season is so strange and bizarre. And even LeBron said it, this is the kind of stuff that can't happen. So something's clearly wrong there. There's clearly a chemistry issue between LeBron and somebody. I mean, I know everyone guesses Kevin Love, but it may just be LeBron and everybody at this point. It kind of feels like everybody who's not repped by Rich Paul. So it's bizarre. really strange, and I don't know what to make of it. I think they'll eventually turn it around. You know, everything I've watched out of LeBron in the past few years makes me think that he'll figure it out and turn it on, but he doesn't look like it right now, at least for Cleveland.
Well, it's kind of amazing. You have a team here on March 25th that's 30 games over 500. They're 51-21. They've got a 2-game edge in the Eastern Conference, and it sounds like the sky is falling for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so strange, and it was for so much of the year, you know, everyone was talking, and for good reason, that it didn't really matter what Cleveland did during the regular season. You know, they'll turn it on in the playoffs. They'll be okay. Now, we didn't see Toronto being this good, but it's starting to feel less and less like that. And like you said, I mean, Cleveland still had a great regular season. They're 30 games over 500. They're still the 1 seed. But it feels like a mess. And it went from, okay, maybe Cleveland can push San Antonio or Golden State to maybe Cleveland's not going to get out of the East, which is just amazing. And I don't see anyone who thinks right now, and I don't see how you can think that Cleveland can win an NBA championship this year. It's just a mess there right now. And it's leading more towards the feeling of, all right, well, what are they going to do in the offseason? Who's getting traded? Who's getting moved? What's going to happen?
Yeah, that will be very, very interesting to see. And we'll find out, you know, who those problem children are for LeBron on this team, because odds are they won't be here next year in some capacity. In terms of the other 4 games that were on the slate last night, anything else stand out to you?
The New Orleans in a bad way, that was just a mess last night. It was really strange that they waited this long to use their extra hardship exemption to pick up another player. I mean, they went out last night with just a sub-NBA team. There was no one on that team that you look at and go, okay, that's a starter for a real contender. I mean, really the only piece I think is maybe Dante Cunningham's a bench player for a contender. So that was a mess, and I think that's a bad look for the league. Then the Clippers and Portland game was fun. J.J. Redick with the big shot there at the end. So, you know, I think Portland's going to – I don't think they can win a first-round series in the West, and I think part of that goes along with the seeding that they're going to end up getting. But I think they can give us a fun game or two in the first round against whoever they play, and I'm excited for that, because that means there's going to be a game where Damian Lillard or C.J. McCollum get so hot that they carry a team into a game that they shouldn't be. So I'm excited for that, and I think Portland at least showing competitiveness against good teams, which the Clippers are this late in the season, is fun and exciting for the playoffs.
I think so as well. I mean, Portland's been a really interesting team, and they've played kind of a brutal schedule here of late, where they've had some tough travel spots, some standalone home games, all that type of thing. So the fact that this team has done what it can to keep its head above water, yeah, I think that's a mark of a team that's really starting to grow a little bit. And, yeah, I mean, they don't have what it takes to knock off Oklahoma City or San Antonio, or if they somehow find their way into the 8th seed. Of course, nobody's beating Golden State. So, that is a nice thing, though, is that maybe they can provide a little bit of interest. But, the one difference that we see this year is that, like last year where the Clippers and the Spurs had to meet in the first round and kind of took turns beating up on each other, and then, neither one of those teams could really do anything in the subsequent rounds. We don't really have that setting up in the Western Conference here this year.
No, not at all. And part of it's been injuries at the bottom of the West. I mean, Utah, I had high expectations for Utah coming into the year, and they've been really beat up throughout the season, and it's made it hard for them to find the rhythm, find a groove, and play well. So I think that's part of it. Memphis obviously is just completely beat up, but they did enough early that it doesn't matter as much right now as far as the playoffs go. It's just going to be a seeding thing with them. So I think injuries is the biggest part of it. I think next year we should be back to having that kind of beat up each other in the middle of the West. That 4-5 series in the West is going to be between two really good teams, and it's going to be unfortunate for whoever comes out of it because they're going to be a little bit worn down. But I almost think we get something similar in the East this year. I think the East is kind of where the West has been the past couple of years, not as top-heavy with great teams, but where all those teams in that kind of 2 through 6 range are so close in talent and ability that we see a lot of really tough series, and you see some teams come out of it worn down. I think it's going to be hard for whoever comes out of the 4-5 series to beat the 1 seed, even if they may be talented enough to, because I think that 4-5 series in the East is going to go down to the wire, and it's going to be tough, and it's going to kind of be draining. So I think it's kind of shifted this year because of the injuries to having those types of series and that type of competitiveness in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Well, we'll look at tonight's action here. We got 9 games on the slate, some fairly big spreads out there, so it could be kind of a lackluster night in the NBA, but we'll see what happens. You've got Washington, 7.5-point chalk against Minnesota. Minnesota officially eliminated from the playoffs, which was just a formality at this point. You've got a Washington team that get over the hump. I mean, that's really been the story for them throughout the year. It's been John Wall and a rotating collection of somebody who might help him out one night with Bradley Beal hurt all the time. How do you see this one shaking out? Do you feel like the Wizards are in a position to, win convincingly over anybody right now?
I want to think they should, because I do still want to see this team sneak into the playoffs. I like watching John Wall play that much, and I'd rather see them over, say Detroit. But it's so hard because, as you said, every time that they're about to get over the hump or they have a chance to, they fold and they don't come out with a win that they should. And so it worries me going into tonight where, again, they really need every win they can get through the rest of the season. But this is the type of game that they could come out flat and it could be a problem. So I think they probably win, but I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this come down to the final minute or so, as a 2-4-point game, something like that.
And I think one of the things that separates Minnesota from some of the other dregs in the league is that, this is a very young team that has incentive to keep playing hard. I mean, they certainly want to keep improving. I mean, this is a team that has enough talent to be in that mix for the 7 or 8 spots, maybe on the fringes next year, but certainly in 2 years. And they're a team that, they don't really know any better other than to go out there and play hard. So Minnesota could be kind of a live dog here down the stretch as a team that people overlook and that they really shouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing they have going for them is there are going to be a lot of nights where Karl Anthony Towns is right up there in the kind of best player in the game, competition. I don't think he's better than John Wall right now, but I don't think it's crazy to say he can play better than John Wall in any single night. I mean, he's that good. He's one of the best players in the league already. So that also helps them because it's not crazy to think that, one night Karl Anthony just goes out and has a monster game and carries the team to a win. He's that talented. So I think you're completely right between, they're young. They don't really need necessarily that top draft pick that some other teams who are going to be shutting down players to tank for the rest of the year need. They're going to go out, and I think there's going to be a couple games where Towns kind of caps off this Rookie of the Year type year with big nights that steal them a win or two that they shouldn't have necessarily had.
Really big game on NBA TV tonight between Charlotte and Detroit. Obviously, this one a little bit bigger of a game for Detroit since they're holding on to that 8 seed. Now they got a 1.5 lead on the Bulls. For Charlotte, seeding is very important. I mean, they can go anywhere from 3 to 6 here in the Eastern Conference. So, home court would be really nice for a team that's 27-11 at home, third best home mark in the Eastern Conference. Detroit's a short little favorite here by a bucket. Continuation of a long homestand for them. How do you see this one playing out?
I like Charlotte a lot, and I think I'd probably lean them tonight. That win over the Spurs they had earlier this week was incredible, coming back down from a really bad first quarter to steal that one, beat the Nets up. And I'm not big on Detroit. They don't have enough shooters to me. I watched that game they won the other night against the Bucks, which they shouldn't have, as the NBA kind of came out and said they had 2 turnovers basically that weren't called on their game-winning tip play. But I just think Charlotte's better. I think, like you said, they're playing for seeding. Every game's important for them because I think a team that shoots as well as they do, if they can get home court in the first round of the playoffs, that's going to be big for them. And they're young, really. I mean, they're in a way they're young. They're a lot of that kind of younger veteran group, the Kemba Walker and Nick Batum, they're not super old guys. So I think they come out. I think they're a better team, and I don't think the spread really scares me away from leaning towards the better team.
Detroit has won 4 straight, but they're at home over Sacramento, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Orlando. So not really a murderer's row or a who's who of opponents there. But is that selling the Pistons a little bit too short to kind of water down those victories?
I don't know.